Growing up watching not so age appropriate movies as a kid, I developed a fascination with Freddy Krueger. His look was unique, he had a badass glove, and he was a pretty funny guy. He was the greatest horror movie icon for a kid my age. Jason, blah. Michael Myers, boring. Freddy was where it was at. I owned a plastic Freddy Krueger glove that I bought at KB Toys. There was a poster of Mr. Krueger that hung on my wall for years next to the Ninja Turtles, and I was even dressed as Freddy Krueger from my kindergarten Halloween parade. Yeah, I was kind of a freak. Now, as an adult, I can appreciate the first 3 movies for what they are. Yeah, even the super homoerotic Freddy's Revenge for its epic gayness. But I find that the following sequels are merely entertaining, and not as awesome as I used to think they were. No wonder I used to like Freddy as a kid. After the first movie, he wasn't nearly as creepy, and he was the equivalent of the WB Frog compared to the other horror movie icons of the 80s.
Hello, my baby. Hello, my honey. Hello, my ragtime gal.
For the past several years, Michael Bay has produced remakes of the popular franchises from years past, including the Texas Chainsaw Massacre, the Amityville Horror, the Hitcher, and Friday the 13th. My opinion varies on all of these. Texas Chainsaw Massacre was okay, but not nearly as masterful as the original. I didn't care for either of the Amityville Horror films. I've seen parts of the Hitcher remake, and it looks terrible. And I love the original. And I actually kind of like the Friday the 13th remake, since it was pretty much a remake of the first 3 movies, and the fact that none of the Friday the 13th movies are any good. When I first heard of the Nightmare remake, I was totally against it. There's nothing wrong with the original, and I actually think it's one of the horror greats. What are they thinking? But I have to admit, I was intrigued with the casting of Jackie Earle Haley as Krueger, and I'm sort of a fan of Kyle Gallner and Thomas Dekker from their work on The Shield and the Sarah Connor Chronicles. Also, Clancy Brown is in it, and as we know, Clancy Brown is the fucking man. It was shaping up to have a pretty great cast.
Hello? Anyone here? Hello?
If you keep falling asleep, they're gonna kick you out of here.
Sorry.
Most of these horror remakes are directed by former music video directors, and the same goes for Nightmare. But since Nightmare consists of, well, nightmares, it seems more appropriate for this film to come with a more stylized perspective. The remake isn't a shot-by-shot remake. It's got a crispy dude named Freddy Krueger who haunts teens' nightmares, a girl with the name Nancy, vengeful parents, and a few scenes recreated from the original. I'm kind of disappointed that they didn't change Krueger's character more. You should try to differentiate yourself from the original as much as possible. Many of the great remakes have done this. Dawn of the Dead, The Thing, The Fly, all vastly different from the films they're based on, yet keeping the same basic premise. Sure, his burnt faces was more realistic, but that's the only thing they changed. Hell, even Wes Craven had the balls to totally recreate Freddy in New Nightmare. This aspect seemed pretty lazy, or maybe they were just scared that people wouldn't recognize him. The scenes they attempted to recreate from the original were, in a sense, lame. The girl getting thrown around the bedroom was far more disturbing than the original. Freddy coming through the wall in the original was done with practical effects, like they used a latex wall to create the effect. In the remake, it's really shitty looking CGI, and looks like it utilized the same technology as the 14-year-old film The Frighteners. Then there's the glove coming out of the bathwater. What can I say? It's the same scene that plays out like the original. There are several situations and characters similar to the original film, but the story as a whole is quite different. Characters, their situations, and the way they interact with each other help it stand out on its own. This film focuses more on the terrorized teens rather than Krueger, which was the right choice, and ultimately connects them to Krueger more than the original did. One of the biggest differences in this version is a possibility that Krueger was not guilty of the crimes he was accused of, which led to his death. It's a nice little addition that makes us feel something different for Freddy rather than just being a crazy fuck with a bad manicure. It also leads to an unintentionally hilarious Superman reveal. I watch a lot of horror movies and jump scares never really bother me. Now false jump scares, they can go suck a butt. But jump scares in general are sometimes necessary for these films. Nightmare has jump scares. A lot of jump scares. It had so many jump scares it's starting to piss me off. Not necessarily because it was scaring me. There were a good few startling moments, but it happened so often that it lost its effect and just became annoying. All of the performances were actually really good, which is what I was expecting, and this is a big advantage this movie has over the other Platinum Dune remakes. Haley is effectively creepy as Krueger and is quite different from Robert Englund's performance. Krueger isn't all about making teeny boppers crack their sheets. He also attempts some old school one-liners throughout, which are kinda hit and miss. Overall grade, B-. As unnecessary as this might be, it ain't half bad. It could have been better, it could have been worse. The filmmakers didn't take the necessary risk to try to make a vastly different film than the original, and they depended way too much on cheap jump scares. But I like some of the changes to the overall story, and the cast elevates the material considerably. It's worth watching if you're a curious Elm Street fan, but the original still reigns supreme.
You have nothing to worry about.